welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Laura.
It's the first weekend of May 2014, Kentucky Derby Day. And in a gated golf community on the shores of Lake Oconee, Georgia, a neighbor is hosting a party. Mint juleps, a TV turned to Churchill Downs, a house full of retirees who've known each other for years. Two of the regulars, though, aren't there. Russell and Shirley Dermond have lived in this neighborhood for over a decade. They have never missed the Derby party. They're the kind of couple everyone assumes will outlive the rest of them out of sheer stubborn niceness. They've been married for over 60 years, the kind of long that makes people believe in something. Nobody thinks much of it at first. Maybe they forgot. Maybe Russell's knee is acting up again. But 3 days later, a neighbor walks up to their front door to check on them because something, nobody can quite say what, feels off. The door isn't locked, and what's inside that house is going to turn this quiet lake community into the center of one of Georgia's most infamous unsolved murders. A case that 12 years later is still missing a head, still missing a motive, and still missing an arrest.
Don't like that.
Me either. Now, I want to really introduce you to Russell and Shirley as the people they actually were, not just the couple the case turned them into. I honestly think these two sound like an adorable couple, and as I read each article about them, it changed how I looked at the case.
Okay. This already I don't really like, but I guess I'm interested to see what happened.
All right. Well, both of them are New Jersey natives, born within about a year of each other. They get married, according to most sources, on December 15th, 1950. So if we do the math together, by the time they're killed in 2014, that's 64 years of marriage. And side note, a lot of the reporting says 68 years. I think that's based off of when the article was written in 2018, because 1950 to 2018, and then widely repeated over the last 8 years. I did try to find a specific marriage announcement. I went through countless 1950s papers. I couldn't find it, but from everything I found, I think that December 15th, 1950 is the date.
It's a long time that they were married.
Right? It really is. Most people don't even get close to 60 years of marriage. I mean, that's a whole long lifespan in and of itself.
Yeah.
Now, Russell served in the Navy during World War II, and afterward, he goes to Fairleigh Dickinson University. And get this, he finishes a 4-year degree in just 3 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
Total overachiever. And it sets the tone for the rest of his career because he goes on to become an executive at General Time Corporation, which is the company behind West Clock and Seth Thomas. If those clock brands mean anything to you.
Vaguely, is it like antique store vibes now?
Yeah, exactly that vibe. I mean, think about grandfather clocks, wind-up alarm clocks, that whole world. He's working in what now basically would be called information services and data processing for them. This is a corporate career that has him traveling across the country and even internationally for the company. He spent decades doing that. And then in his 50s, he basically does a complete turnaround and starts an entirely second career.
Wow, in his 50s? That's, I guess, midlife crisis type behavior.
Very possible, or bold, or worn out. I don't know.
Or just adventurous.
Yeah, maybe. I'm sure by then the kids are grown and he's ready.
Like something else.
He goes, right. Russell goes into the fast food business and ends up owning and operating a chain of Hardee's, which you may recognize now as Carl's Jr., around Metro Atlanta. At one point, he had up to 16 locations.
Wow. That's a big pivot. Clocks to burgers.
It feels so opposite sides of a career path, right?
Yeah.
This pivot, though, worked out for him. Shirley, meanwhile, is educated at Barnard College in New York City. So she's college educated at a time when it's a lot less common for women of her generation. She becomes a homemaker for most of their marriage while they're raising their kids. But by every account, she stays incredibly sharp. She's described as a genuinely accomplished, competitive bridge player, not casual card game bridge, tournament level bridge.
Wow.
She also loved doing the crossword puzzle every single day without fail.
Wow. She's got pretty good routine going on there. Crossword puzzle, hard. It's good for
It
her.
is hard. Give me all the Sudokus, but yes, Shirley does have this real routine. Their son later says, nobody who ever met his mother didn't love her. He also says that she never gossiped, which feels like a small detail, but in a tight-knit, gated community where everybody knows everybody's business, that's a really meaningful thing for people to say about someone.
Yeah, for sure. Especially like you're saying in that tight knit, gated community. I feel like gossip is always a part of that.
Always. They raise 4 children together and eventually have 9 grandchildren. For much of the 90s, they're living along the Chattahoochee River near Roswell, just outside Atlanta, before Russell fully steps back from the restaurant business.
So when do they end up living at the lake?
Right around turn of the century, so right around 2000, they move out to Great Waters. This is a gated golf and lake community within a larger development called Reynolds Plantation out on Lake Oconee. And I want to paint this picture for you because it is something. If you look up this house, it's got this manicured golf course. A Jack Nicklaus designed course actually runs right through part of the neighborhood. There's a security gate at the entrance, like a guarded security gate. The whole upscale retirement community aesthetic.
So this was probably a dream for them, something that they worked hard for.
Absolutely. Their whole lives, right?
Yeah.
They become regulars at the Lake Oconee Community Church. They're the kind of people who never miss a neighborhood gathering. Friends describe them as down to earth, well liked, the proverbial couple, which I loved.
Yeah.
Almost every single person who's interviewed about this couple uses some version of, quote, they didn't have an enemy in the world.
That phrase is going to feel very loaded in about 5 minutes, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it really is, which is why I wanted to spend some time talking about them. Because when you find out what happened, it's really hard to reconcile that with they didn't have an enemy in the world.
Yeah.
Now, this is a really sad piece of their history. This family had already survived something unthinkable once before this case even begins. In the year 2000, their oldest son, Mark, was murdered during a drug deal that went bad in Atlanta. Now, Mark wasn't a dealer himself. He had struggled with substance use disorder, and that struggle put him in a violent situation with the wrong person. His killer was eventually caught, convicted, and as far as I could find, remains in prison to this day.
Oh, wow. That is so sad. So hard for that family. They already had to bury a child, which is so unthinkable.
Absolutely. And to violence, to something so shocking that you can't prepare for.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to flag this now because it does come up again and again across the next decade of coverage once we get to 2014. Investigators looked hard more than once at whether Mark's death could somehow connect to what happened to his parents. And every single time without exception, they rule it out. No connection. His killer never leaves prison the whole time this second case unfolds. It's just a second completely unrelated tragedy landing on the same family, which honestly might be crueler than if it had all somehow been connected.
It's almost like there would be some strange kind of relief if it were connected, because then at least you would have a reason to why and maybe some answers.
Yes, exactly. That's a really good way to put it. And it's basically the exact tension their surviving children live with for the next 12 plus years. No thread to pull, just two separate horrors that happened to land on the same three people who were then left behind. Let's talk about this house because it will matter a lot to the story. In the earlier reporting, it's described as a 3,200 square foot lakefront home on Carolyn Drive. When I look up the address now, it says that it is 5,800 square feet. It was put up for sale about 6 months after everything happened to Russell and Shirley, and the sale closed about another 5 months after that. I believe that everything that's on its listing is what's current, so I don't know where the disconnect is there, but they don't have any pictures up of it anymore. You can just see like the property outline because it has been quite a while. It's on this wooded cul-de-sac that overlooks a private cove on the lake.
Oh, it sounds really nice either way, and a good size property, especially
Yeah.
for two retirees.
Right. Very nice. It says in the listing it has a 2-car attached garage, and I kind of had to hunt for that because some of the reporting incorrectly says that it was like an attached carport, which will also matter. But everything that I can find in the pictures that are in the newspaper and everything, it's a 2-car attached garage. They have a private boat dock. They also have like a private dock house type thing that's on the property.
Like a lake house that's part of their house. Not
Yeah.
really, but like, like a pool house.
Like where you would change, yes. Pool
like
house.
for the
Perfect.
lake.
Exactly. A pool house for the lake. At the time in 2014, it was $1 million home. And when they list to sell it, just because I find home stuff interesting, it gets listed in November of 2014 for $769,000. It sells the following April for $650,000. Well, when I looked it up today, Zillow has it valued at over $2.8 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
So life just goes on. Someone's living in a nearly $3 million house that used to be a murder scene. I'm surprised it sold that quickly. That seems really fast to be like a murder house.
The listing says it's been fully renovated. It has Viking appliances. It's like top tier, best of the best. I think they really had to get everything out and redo it all for it to even sell at that price, which was a steal.
Sold a lot less than what it was worth. Yeah.
If you can get past what happened there, then yeah.
Yeah.
Now, like we said, the community itself is gated. There's a guardhouse at the entrance. It really is the kind of place that people move to specifically because it feels safe.
Yeah, which matters. That is something that people look for. The guard at the entrance, the gated community, that is the safety that people want. And I bet people there don't feel that safe after this happened.
No, not so much. I do have some quotes from their neighbors directly related to that. Yep.
Yeah.
There's a detail that doesn't come out until months later. There are security cameras at the guardhouse. However, when this happened, the night it happened, those cameras not working.
Of course, that's what always happens.
Yep, sure is. I feel like we need some kind of security cameras that have a backup or a no-fail. Right? I don't know what we need, but too often the cameras weren't working.
All the time that seems to happen.
Yep. They don't really say whether whoever did this knew that or just got lucky, but do you want to point that out?
Yeah.
Okay, let's build out the timeline. I want you to feel how this unfolds the way the neighbors actually experienced it, which is slowly and then all at once. So, May 1st, 2014, is the last confirmed sighting of Russell alive. He's out running errands. He's seen at a Publix not far from the lake. That evening, he and Shirley talked to their son Brad on the phone. By every account, it's a completely normal call. Nothing said that anyone remembers as strange or significant afterwards.
So whatever happens pretty close to right after that, right?
Right. That's what investigators believe. Sheriff Howard Sills, and we're going to get to know him very well over this episode because this case basically defines the back half of his career. Eventually, we'll narrow the killing window to a 24-hour stretch between Friday afternoon, May 2nd, and Saturday afternoon, May 3rd.
And this is the weekend of the Derby party.
Correct. The same weekend as the Derby party. And this feels a little bit kind of eerie because it's not like this couple just goes silent and nobody notices for weeks. The signs pile up almost immediately, one small thing at a time. Friday, May 2nd, Shirley had actually worked that morning's newspaper crossword. It's sitting there, mostly finished, but the next day's paper never gets touched. Same with their mail. That same Saturday, mail goes out to their box on Carolyn Drive and just sits there uncollected day after day.
So there's a window where things are just quietly wrong before anyone realizes it.
Yeah. They've said along the whole way that it's between Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
For other details of this, it makes me feel like it was during the night. So we've got the newspaper that nobody picks up. We have a mailbox slowly filling, phone calls that start going unanswered, and then the Derby party, the one social event this couple never misses. And their chairs are just empty.
And no one goes to check on them that night. Had they like RSVP'd that they would be there, or just everyone comes type of deal?
I don't know if there was an official RSVP or not, or if they were invited over the phone and committed. They also had never not gone in all the years that they'd lived there. They always looked forward to it. Everyone was planning on them coming. I think that them not being checked on right away wasn't, like negligence or anything. I think that's just how it goes in a community like this. And honestly, probably all the time, in most communities, people assume the best. They assume something mild, something normal. No one's jumping to worst case scenarios. They're thinking maybe they're visiting one of the kids. Maybe one of them isn't feeling well and they didn't want anyone to make a fuss about it. The absence, while it was noted and it was odd, didn't trigger alarm bells, basically.
Well, why would I? I mean, you live in a safe place with the gated community, the security cameras, the guard. They probably just thought one of those things.
Right.
And they're adults.
Normal.
They don't have to call and tell their friends why they're not coming, you know?
Yeah, totally. It takes a few days, though, of this accumulating silence, the missed party, the unanswered calls, watching the newspaper stuck up outside, before it tips over into real concern. It takes until Tuesday, May 6th. Friends who live nearby decide, we haven't heard from them for quite a few days. They missed the party. There was no, sorry, we missed. I mean, not that that's expected or required, but they're the nicest of people. That's just what they would do, right?
Yeah.
So they go over to the house on Carolyn Drive to check on them in person.
Well, that's good that they finally did go check on them when they're not answering their calls. You're seeing all these things and not just calling them or assuming they went out of town. I'm glad that someone did go to check on them.
Right, totally.
Because they could have gone out of town to visit somebody else.
Yeah, someone could have given them a weekend away at a lakeside other
a week.
lakeside cabin or a week or something.
And that would account for the mail building up and the newspapers not getting picked up and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Which,
right.
I mean, maybe they would hold their mail or have someone pick up their mail or something for them. But I mean, I'm glad that they didn't just assume they were on vacation for a week.
Same. Probably really lucky, actually, that there was that party scheduled.
Yeah.
That they had committed to going to. Because missing that started that little...
Yeah. The alarm bells.
Make sure they're okay. Yeah. Without full-blown panic. The neighbors get to the house. The first thing that registers is the front door. It's unlocked. Now, in a gated community where people leave for the day without a second thought, that alone is unusual, but it's not alarming. It happens, accident, whatever. So they go in. The garage is attached to the house, and that's where they find him. Russell Dermond's body is on the floor of that garage, behind one of the couple's cars, lying in a small pool of blood, and his head had been removed.
Oh, that's a terrible sight for them to find.
Can't even imagine.
I can't either. Like, nightmarish.
Right. And it's one thing, still probably absolutely horrific for law enforcement, but it's another thing when it's one of your dear friends.
Yes. Awful.
So Russell had been decapitated, and his head is nowhere in the house, nowhere in the garage. And in fact, to this day, it has never been found. So not that week, not that year, and not now, over 12 years later.
Wow. Do you think they could have put it in the lake or something, and that's why they didn't find it?
I don't know where they put it. We are going to talk about the search for it, but just awful.
Yeah.
And awful. So bizarre.
And to take it with you, that's really bizarre.
Yeah, good point. Hang on to that. Here's what makes this scene itself even stranger once investigators actually start processing it. There's no forced entry anywhere on the property. No broken window. No jimmied block. Nothing. No sign of a struggle inside the house or in the garage itself. There's no overturned furniture. No defensive wounds described in early reporting. Nothing knocked over. And as far as anyone can tell in that first sweep, it doesn't even appear that things were stolen. Not jewelry, not cash, not electronics, nothing.
So just an 88-year-old man alone in his own garage, somebody did this to him without any kind of fight breaking out?
Without any obvious fight, at least. None that leaves a mark on the scene they're trying to make sense of, which means whether he knew whoever did this and had no reason to be on guard, or he had no time at all to react before this happened, or both, honestly, those two things really aren't mutually exclusive. And here's the second half of this discovery, which somehow makes it worse. Shirley, 87 years old, is not in the house at all. Not in the garage, not upstairs, nowhere on the property. There's no sign of her anywhere. So at this point, and this is important, it shapes everything law enforcement does for the next 10 days. Investigators genuinely don't know if she's alive or if she's dead. Their working theory, the one they're publicly hoping is true, is that she's been kidnapped, taken alive by whoever did this to her husband.
Wow. That is almost worse than not knowing. And she's an elderly lady, like, it's awful.
So you're wondering, is there going to be a ransom?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
And
why?
It, like you said, it really is worse for the family. And we're going to hear that directly from her son later. The specific kind of limbo where you don't get to grieve because you're still supposed to be hoping. Now, her cell phone, her keys, her pocketbook, those were all left behind, sitting inside the house exactly where she would have set them down normally. Whatever happened to her, she didn't walk out that door, it seems, and leave under her own volition. Somebody took her, and somebody's already made sure she'll never need any of it again. Now, on top of the missing head, the missing wife, the untouched valuables, deputies are now also looking at a house that, for as much horror as it holds, gives them almost nothing to work with. No physical evidence pointing anywhere, no witnesses, no apparent motive, just a scene that raises more questions than answers. And a search for an 87-year-old woman that's about to stretch on for 10 more days. So now this becomes a full-blown search and rescue operation. At least that's the posture everyone takes publicly, because there's still a real chance, as far as anyone knows, that Shirley has been kidnapped and is alive somewhere. Seals goes public within days of Russell's body being found. He says, quote, "We have no idea where Mrs. Dermond is, and we hope that she's still alive."
So what does an actual search for someone like this look like?
It was huge. It's bigger than I think most people would picture for this situation. The FBI gets involved almost immediately, and not just in a supporting role. They send agents from their behavioral science unit to work up a profile on who might be responsible. Within about a week, Shirley's photo is going up on digital billboards across the entire state of Georgia. Her description goes out publicly too. It says she's 87 years old, about 5'2", 148 pounds, gray hair, blue eyes.
And I did wonder too, what was like their health like? Were they still pretty active and healthy as late 80-year-olds?
It seems like it. There are quotes from 2024 saying that they could still very likely be alive right now.
Oh, really?
Be married for 70-something years.
Wow.
74.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's not like specifics, but those quotes led me to believe they were in good health. The only thing I saw was the comment from the friends about Russell's knee acting up, but not that it was anything major.
Side note, I was trying to remember how old our grandmas are. Like
her age, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, they're still pretty
88,
active.
89, yeah.
Crazy. That is a pretty big response for her. That's great that they were able to get that kind of response to look for her.
Yeah, I agree. It also tells you exactly how alarming this looked to law enforcement from day one. I mean, an elderly man decapitated in his own garage and his wife of over 60 years simply gone. It's not a normal missing persons case. That's an active 5-alarm fire, and they're throwing every resource they have at it. And here's a detail that kind of tells you what law enforcement is up against once something like this goes public. They start getting tips, hundreds of them, eventually. Some useful, most not. But at least one, according to reporting at the time, comes from a self-described psychic offering to help investigators locate Shirley.
Wow. That's great that they got a lot of tips, except for most of them weren't helpful, but there's always going to be a psychic one too, it seems.
Of course. Of course there is. And it actually becomes such a recurring thing in this case that Seals is still joking bitterly about the psychics years later. But in that first week, they can't afford to ignore anything because they really don't have anything. So every tip, credible or not, has to at least be logged and considered. Meanwhile, investigators are also quietly doing the less dramatic work. They're pulling the Dermonds' financial records, their phone records, trying to see if there's anything in their life that would explain why someone might target them. And this early digging turns up nothing. No red flags, no secret debts, no threatening phone calls, no indication whatsoever that this was a couple anyone had a reason to hurt.
So even in that first week before they found her, they already can't find any kind of motive or anything?
No motive at all. And that absence of a motive really is going to become the defining frustration of this entire case. But for now, put yourself in the family's position during this stretch. Keith Dermond, their son, gives an interview about a weekend, and what he says publicly is just devastating in how plain it is. He says, "Our thoughts are with our mom now. Not knowing is the worst." And then he says, "They didn't deserve this. They never hurt anybody."
Such a simple thing, but really hits hard in this case, I think, because they really didn't deserve what happened to them. Awful.
One of the newspaper articles used that quote, "They didn't deserve this. They never hurt anybody." The first part of it as like a front page headline on this case. It really does resonate. Now, 10 days, that's how long this goes on. 10 days of billboards, tip lines, a profile being built by federal behavioral specialists, a family publicly begging for their mother to be found alive, while at the same time, quietly starting to prepare themselves for the worst.
So what finally breaks it?
On May 16th, not law enforcement, not the billboards, not the tip line, a couple of fishermen just out on Lake Oconee doing what people do on that lake every single day. They come across a body. It's about 5 miles from where the Dermonds live, out near Wallace Dam.
Oh, is that Shirley?
Yeah, it's Shirley. And here's where the contrast with how Russell was found becomes so important. Russell was left exposed right there on the garage floor, easily discovered by anyone who walked in. Shirley is the complete opposite. She's weighted down with two 30-pound concrete blocks tied around her legs with rope. She's tangled in submerged treetops, somewhere between 50 and 90 feet down.
Oh, wow. So she wasn't meant to be found at all.
It doesn't seem like it, and that's exactly the read investigators eventually land on. One victim left where he'd absolutely be discovered within days, and the other deliberately hidden in a way that, if it hadn't have been for a couple of fishermen in exactly the right spot, might never have surfaced. Sill's own initial read in the hours right after she's pulled from the water is that there's no glaring sign of trauma visible, which, if you think about it, is almost more unsettling. It's only once they do the autopsy that they understand what actually happened to her. She'd been down there, investigators believe, essentially the entire time everyone was out there, hoping she was still alive somewhere.
Oh, that's so sad. And so really the whole search, the billboards, profile, all of it, she's already been gone this whole time.
Yeah, really sad the whole time. The autopsy comes back the next day, May 17th. They find blunt force trauma, 2 to 3 deep blows to the head. They found that she had already died before her body went into the water. And this is the detail that changes the entire investigation from here forward, because up until this point, Sills genuinely doesn't know how the killer even got onto the property without tripping any alarms, without a single neighbor noticing a strange car parked on Carolyn Drive. But once they find Shirley's body 5 miles out in open water.
They must have come by boat.
Yeah, they came by boat. It's so unsettling.
Yeah.
This one, I think, is one that's going to keep me up at night. Sill says it himself plainly. He said, "Now we know whoever did this came by boat. No one's going to carry a dead body across the lake during the daytime. So remember what we already know about the house, the private dock, the direct lake access. Whoever did this either used the Dermonds' own dock to leave or knew this lake well enough to navigate a secluded cove in the dark with a body without being seen by a single one of their neighbors.
Wow. I still wonder about the timeline, you know?
So that is why I said I feel like it had to be Friday night.
Unless it happened like Saturday during the day and then they came back and took her out at night.
Possible.
Because if she had already passed and they left her in the house and then they came back, but I don't know why they would do that either, because who's to say that someone wouldn't have come in between?
And found both of them.
It's just really weird timing.
Really weird. They still missed the party on Saturday, but you're not doing that during the day when everyone's out doing Saturday springtime stuff.
Unless they did. I mean, they could have.
Maybe, but
that. They didn't have like a fence or something, so someone probably would have seen a boat pull up to their dock.
Yeah. But there are a ton of trees around.
Yeah.
But you'd have to know it really well.
Yeah.
At least
very odd.
Their property. Because then you think about getting in the house without broken windows, without breaking locks, nothing. And nothing is taken from the house. The other thing I was thinking about was either they took her out still alive and killed her somewhere else, but where did that happen? Because there's nothing in any of the reporting about like a scene where this would have happened to her. And
there wasn't like blood found in the house.
No, and they really say a small pool of blood under Russell. So where
did that take place? Because I feel like that would leave a lot more blood than just a small pool.
So either they just haven't released that and are holding it back, but I keep coming back to that piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about one more piece of forensic detail here, because it actually doesn't come out until years later. But I think it's important to walk through this the way the investigation actually walked through it, not with everything revealed all at once.
Okay, let's walk through it.
In that first week, all Sills will say publicly about Russell's cause of death is cranial cerebral trauma, head trauma, essentially. Because without the head, they can't determine exactly how he died. Was he shot, stabbed, beaten? They don't know. It wasn't until later, years into the investigation, that they find gunshot residue on Russell's shirt collar. Sills' working theory becomes that Russell was shot in the head first and then decapitated after death, specifically so the killer could take the bullet with them, destroy the one piece of physical evidence that could trace back to a specific weapon.
Yeah, that's really calculated.
Sills himself is wrestling with that exact same contradiction, and it actually shapes one of his earliest working theories that there's more than one person responsible.
Why does he land on multiple people specifically?
A few reasons, and they're all physical. First, the sheer effort involved. Decapitating a body, even one that's no longer resisting, takes real physical strength and, frankly, real physical willingness to keep going once you've started. Sills says it plainly at one point. That takes a little effort to do, even if the person's not alive. Second, you've got two victims handled in two completely different ways, in two completely different locations. Russell, staged in the garage. Shirley transported 5 miles out into open water. Sills' reasoning is that doing both of those things thoroughly in whatever window of time the killer or killers had points toward more than one set of hands.
So it's not just a theory pulled out of nowhere. It's actually built off what the crime scene physically required?
Right. And when a reporter eventually asks him, point blank, what kind of person could be responsible for something like this, Sills doesn't hedge at all. Partly why I really enjoyed him being the person on this case. I love his responses. His answer was, I would say it was a particularly brutal savage that did this. Whether he did it as a result of self-preservation or he did it as a result of just pure meanness, it takes a certain level of depravity to throw an 87-year-old woman in the lake and cut the head off of an 88-year-old man.
Oh my gosh. That does show savageness from those people. But I feel like not usually something the police say on record.
No, it's not. And again, that's part of why this case got the attention it did early on. Even the lead investigator isn't bothering to soften how he talks about it. And in that same stretch, while all of this reasoning is being worked out, there's still an active physical search going on. Because remember, Russell's head is still out there somewhere, and investigators haven't given up on finding it.
Do they think it's in the lake too?
That is exactly where they go next.
Okay.
They wonder that because if Shirley was,
Yeah.
why wouldn't it be, right?
I was thinking they could have wrapped it in something and weighted it down too.
Right.
And probably something smaller like a head is harder for someone to find than a body, a full body.
A full body with 30-pound blocks tied to it.
Yeah.
That's a lot more, like you said, than something small that you could weigh down with rocks or something.
Yeah.
The Georgia Department of National Resources is brought in to help search the water and the shoreline near the house. At one point, their search is suspended for a few days, but then they pick it up quick because Sills knows that a holiday weekend is coming up, which means a lot more boat traffic on the lake. It means more eyes on the water, but also potentially more evidence getting disturbed or destroyed if they don't move fast.
Yeah. So basically, they're racing regular lake traffic to find evidence before it gets kicked around or disturbed in some way.
Yeah, exactly. And at one point during this search, they think they've actually found something. DNR spots what looks like a lawn chair in the water, close enough to the property that Sills wonders if it might have belonged to the Dermonds, if it might somehow be connected to what happened.
Did they find anything?
Dead end. When they go back for a closer look, it turns out just to be a stump. Not a chair at all, just nothing.
That really is kind of frustrating if you think you found something and it's close to their property and then it's nothing.
Right. And honestly, that's what a lot of the early investigation looks like from the inside. They aren't getting constant dramatic breakthroughs. It's these painstaking searches that mostly turn up nothing. There are moments where you think you found the thing that could crack it open, and then it's a tree stump. So by the end of May 2014, here's where the case actually stands. So almost, a full month, because what happened to Russell was either May 2nd, 3rd, somewhere in that range. They have 2 elderly victims killed sometime in a 24-hour window. They're still missing Russell's head. They have one working theory involving multiple killers, really just based on the physical evidence rather than any actual identification. And a sheriff who is already less than a month in, calling whoever is responsible a, quote, brutal savage on the record, but having absolutely no name to attach to that description.
So going into the theories in the years that follow, they're building a profile of what someone would have to be like to do this, because really they have nothing on who.
Exactly. And that gap between how clearly they can describe the kind of person capable of this and how little they can say about who that person actually is going to define this case for the next 12 years.
Let me ask you, were the security cameras only not working that Friday night? Were they working again Saturday night?
I'm not sure if they were working Saturday night. I don't think so. I think it was that Friday, Saturday.
Like that whole weekend?
Possibly into Sunday, yeah. But usually they were working.
Yeah.
So either someone was able to do that or...
Yeah.
Got lucky. By mid-May, the FBI put up a $20,000 reward. And by June, the president of the lake resort pledges another $30,000 on top of that. So Seals personally opens a reward account at the local People's Branch Bank.
So there's real money on the table almost immediately after this happened.
Yeah, really fast. Seals is very candid about why, too. He says, most crimes aren't solved through brilliant detective work. They're solved because somebody talks. His exact words, quote, most crimes are solved by somebody telling somebody something. Somebody knows about this, and we want them to call us and tell us.
Did they get any calls from the reward being placed?
They did get some calls, just not with anything useful, at least not yet. Now, I think the way that this small, quiet lake community, how they reacted in real time, is honestly one of the more human parts of this whole story. Putnam County, remember, is not a place used to this type of crime. This is a rural county. The sheriff himself says that the worst they usually deal with is the occasional domestic violence case or a drug-related killing, the kind of whodunit murder where everyone already basically knows who did it within a week. Sills has been sheriff for 18 years at that point, so he is not new to the job. He already has 4 decades in law enforcement altogether, and this is the first time in his entire career he's had to personally ask the public to fund a reward.
So this really isn't shocking because of what happened, but also because of where it happened. They don't see things like this there.
No, they don't. And you can feel it in how people are talking about it. A local newspaper editor named Ron Bridgman describes it as the prime topic of conversation in town. His exact words are that it's consumed hours and hours and hours of people's time. Downtown Eatonton, this is a quiet little historic district. They have antique shops, clothing boutiques, and people are standing outside these shops just talking about the case, trading theories back and forth. Bridgman's wife, who's also a newspaper editor, says there are as many theories as there are people in the county.
That's such a small town detail. Like everyone's becoming an amateur detective all at once.
Right? Yes. And it's not just idle chatter. It starts changing how people actually live. Within the Great Waters community specifically, there's a documented surge in gun purchases. People who've lived behind that gate for years, who moved there specifically because it felt safe, start arming themselves. They get alarm systems installed. People who have never had one before are suddenly getting the highest tech one they can find.
So the fear is genuinely reshaping that whole neighborhood, which, understandably, I would do that too.
Yeah. And I think the person who says it best is Keith Dermond, talking about his own parents' house sitting empty. He says, it had such great memories. Now I can't ever imagine staying there. And I do not blame him at all. I would feel the same.
Absolutely.
It's sad though, because this is his family vacation home, the place his parents built their whole retirement around. It's just gone for him now. Not sold yet, not officially, but completely unlivable in his mind. Now, if we fast forward to August, about 3 months out, this is where the reality of a case like this starts to set in for everyone involved. The reward has climbed to around $55,000 by this point, and Seals, when he's asked how things are going, is again remarkably candid about it. He says, reluctantly, or regrettably, I guess is the better word, I have to admit that things have slowed considerably. We are not getting any new calls. We're not even getting the psychics.
So nobody is calling now, even though they've upped the reward. They're not getting anything anymore.
Right? Not even the psychics. Which, dark as it sounds, is actually a real marker of how a case like this starts to go cold. It's not usually one dramatic moment where the investigation stalls. It's this slow drying up where even the unreliable tips taper off because the story stopped being fresh in people's minds. And Keith, for his part, is trying to stay hopeful in that same interview. He's saying he's confident in sales and the investigators. He says that he trusts they're doing everything they can. But you can also hear him bracing for the alternative. He calls it a, quote, very infamous case, already just 3 months in, and says he's not sure as far as his own reputation that Sills is going to let it go unsolved.
So even the family is starting to talk about this less like an active case, more like something the sheriff's office is going to have to carry.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. And that's where we're going to leave the story for now. At the 3-month mark, with a community that's changed the way it locks its doors, the reward that's risen to almost $55,000, but has stopped generating calls, and a family caught between hope and that slow understanding that this might not get solved quickly if it gets solved at all. We'll get into how the investigation continued, the theories, the suspects, and even things popping up in 2024 and 2025 when we come back. Thank you for joining us for part 1 of the Dermond murders. If you want to read more about this case or see the resources that we used to write it, you can head over to our blog, which is on our website, crimeclueless.com, and we'll link it in the show notes. We would love to connect with you on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Just search for @CrimeClueless. Tell us your theories, feedback, or send us some case suggestions. We would be super grateful if you enjoy listening to Crime Clueless, if you would take a moment to rate, review, or share our podcast. Your support helps us reach more listeners, and honestly, each rating means the world. You can find Crime Clueless anywhere you listen to podcasts. And as always, remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murders.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.